All right, so let's talk this afternoon about severe weather safety. Every year, this time of year, we start talking about thunderstorms, hail, tornadoes, those type of hazards that are most common in the spring. And this is a lead in to our Severe Weather Awareness Week that we have planned for next week. Joining me today from the Weather Service is Catherine Lininger and Cameron Batiste. So, as I just mentioned, next week we are planning Awareness Week campaign with different topics every day. We'll do heat safety on Monday, thunderstorm safety Tuesday, tornado Wednesday, flood Thursday, and then beach safety, including rip currents, on Friday. Wednesday will also be a tornado drill where basically we put out a message saying this begins the tornado drill. We won't be using live codes. We'll be basically using a required weekly test on weather radio. But many schools and businesses use this as a chance to exercise their tornado plan. So I'm with the National Weather Service Houston Galveston office as our Cameron and Catherine. And there's 122 offices across the nation. Our focus is on Southeast Texas. You can see there circled on the map. And it's our job, the core of our mission is to issue forecasts and warnings for the protection of life and property. So we need to let you all know when the weather is going to be bad, when it's something that is threatening. Just a few weeks ago, it was a winter weather event with extreme cold and wind and snow and ice, or it could be a hurricane or tropical storm or a tornado. So floods, of course, we get it all here. So that's really the core of our mission. In the lower right-hand corner there, you can see our operations area. There's forecasters briefing each other during Hurricane Harvey. This is at shift change. And we're actually housed in the Galveston County Office of Emergency Management building. And so when you were talking about severe weather preparedness, part of that is to understand what is your risk, what is your vulnerability for the situation. Are you outdoors? Are you in a mobile home? Are you in a floodplain? All of these factors will play into how vulnerable you are in that situation to severe weather. Have a plan for that situation. So let's say you're outdoors, you're camping or boating. You need to be thinking about if a thunderstorm were to approach, where would you shelter? What about your home area or workplace? Where's the safest place to shelter there? What if there's a tornado coming? You need to think about all these things now when the weather is great, so that when the time comes, you'll know what to do. And then have a way to get weather information, watches and warnings, even be able to monitor the radar, especially if you have an outdoor event. Right now, there's a lot of outdoor testing sites and vaccination sites, and so we really need to be weather aware that what could be coming. As far as spending time outdoors, as I mentioned, this is a situation where you're especially vulnerable, so you're going to want to be aware of the forecast before you head out. Are we expecting thunderstorms on that day? How will you receive a warning if one is issued? Have a way to get the warnings and weather information. Know where the nearest shelter is located, and when action needs to be taken, take decisive action. Don't wait. Head for shelter before the storm arrives. There's a number of different ways to get weather alerts. There's websites like weather.gov and many others. You can get weather alerts on your cell phone. There's a program called Wireless Emergency Alerts that I'll explain a little bit more in a minute. And there's a lot of weather apps. So if you go to your app store, whether it's Apple or Android or something else, and you search for weather apps or weather alert apps or weather radar apps, there's a lot of good apps, and many of them are free. And many of them have an alerting feature where if your phone is in a certain area that is under a warning, you'll get a notification. Weather radio is a really great device, many years of success. Basically, you set the county you're in on the radio, and if there's a warning for that county, it'll sound an audible alert and read the warning. So when this is really, really useful is if you have a tornado overnight when you're sleeping and you wouldn't necessarily get the information any other way. Warnings also go out through TV and radio. Y'all have heard the tones. The National Weather Service out of League City has issued a severe thunderstorm warning for, and that's basically when we hit enter on the warning, that warning reaches the TV and radio stations and it goes out on their emergency alert system devices. And then, like I say, there's many apps. The link I have on this page, weather.gov/subscribe, there's a very long list of different weather options. So you can explore there as well. Wireless emergency alerts, I kind of touched on this a moment ago. About, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, we all started to get these warnings on our phones, and a lot of people didn't realize this program had gotten underway. Amber alerts as well. And so during Hurricane Harvey, I think just about everyone saw a lot of this with all the flash flood warnings and tornado warnings. The phones were alerting all the time. And this is this WEA system where you get warnings to your mobile phone, and it basically follows you around. So if you're traveling, let's say you're traveling up through Oklahoma and you drive into a tornado warning, it'll actually alert you for that. It basically looks at the warning and where the cell towers are they in the warning polygon or not? And if they are, you'll get that alert. So that's a little bit about how that works. Just recently, these messages have gotten longer, and now they're in Spanish as well. You can choose to receive them in Spanish rather than English. This is so-called WEA 2.0, and this is only right now for the newest phones. So as people upgrade their phones, they'll gain that capability. If you want to learn more about WEA and your wireless carrier, for example, say Verizon, you would just search WEA Verizon or WEA AT&T and learn a lot more. So watch warning advisory. These are the categories of products we issue to alert people on what's going on. So a lot of people don't really know the difference between a watch and a warning. A watch is basically heads up, be alert. The conditions favor something to occur. So, for example, if there's a tornado watch, that means over typically a large area, the ingredients are there. Be alert, heads up, be ready to act if you do have a tornado or a tornado warning in the area. The warning is your take action message. It's for a smaller area, and that means the hazard has been detected on radar or spotted, maybe reported to us by a spotter or law enforcement. And that means take action, get to shelter, protect yourself if you're in that warned area. So if you look at this map in the upper right, in this case, the yellow area is meant to be the watch, and this much smaller red polygon is the warning. So if you're in house number 2 here, you're under a watch but not a warning, and that means be alert. No immediate action is necessary, but know where you will go if there is a warning for your area. And if you're home 1 here in that warned area, you need to be getting to the safe room in your house or business. There is also something you can look at from the National Weather Service called a severe thunderstorm outlook. And in this case, the Storm Prediction Center out of Norman, Oklahoma, looks at the next 7 days and identifies areas they're concerned about high winds, large hail, or tornadoes. And I'll show you some examples of this in a moment. But these maps, looking out the next 3 days, typically have these categories which go from 1 to 5, marginal, slight, enhanced, moderate, and high, where high is the most serious, the most severe. So let's look at an example now. This is from April 22nd, 2020. This was the day we had a very, very bad tornado move through Polk County on through Louisiana and into Alabama and Mississippi. And in the upper right, you see that red dot there, the lower sequence of dots, that corresponds to that tornadic storm. And so what the Storm Protection Center did that morning is they identified the areas they were most concerned about tornadoes. And so the highest percentages were actually just a little bit north. And this black hatched area points out the potential for significant severe, meaning violent tornadoes, very large hail. And so you could see that they did capture where the tornadoes occur fairly well. Although this very significant Polk tornado was not in the maximum, but it really doesn't need to be. It was in this 5% area. And then they do something similar for damaging winds, and you can see they captured the damaging wind location pretty well also. And then they have these categories. You see marginal, slight, enhanced. And so the Polk tornado occurred kind of on the boundary of slight to enhanced. Bottom line is, if you're anywhere in these areas, whether it be marginal, slight to enhanced, you do have the risk of severe weather. Looking a little bit more at that Polk County damage, these photos were taken from the Onalaska area, and you can see, we can see the really total destruction of these beach homes right there near the lake. And in the lower left, you can actually see the damage scar as this black line. This is a view from satellite. So the way this is created, there's a vegetation band that you can take a before and an after image and subtract, and you get this very clear damage path of over 30 miles through Polk County. So just a very, very significant tornado. Here's a look at the type of thing we're looking at in the weather office, making these warning decisions. We're looking at different radar images. This is what we call reflectivity on the upper left. This is the velocity data in the upper right. It tells us where the motions are within the storm. And this is something called correlation coefficient and differential reflectivity. So a couple things to point out, and we do Skywarn weather spotter training where we get into a lot more detail on this sort of thing. But we see a couple things here with this storm that are very classic for tornadoes. We see this hook echo in this kind of ball at the tip of this appendage coming down here. And then the yellow next to green is a very, very tight circulation going from Onalaska over to Seven Oaks. So the other thing that's fairly new is this blue kind of hole in the correlation coefficient data. That's actually detecting debris getting lofted by the tornado. So just a very, very concerning tornado. Now, if you look at a lot of different types of hazards at this link below, you can see which ones lead to the most fatalities. And our attention is often on things like hurricanes and tornadoes and certainly flooding. But number one over the 30-year period is actually heat-related fatalities. And then that's followed closely by flood, tornado. Rip currents are also quite high. We don't often think of that, but we're going to talk about that this afternoon. Severe winds, extreme cold. Unfortunately, we just dealt with that in the local area. And it's got hurricane at the bottom, but I think that's a little bit deceptive in that there's a lot of flood-related fatalities with hurricanes that aren't counted there. When does severe weather occur in our area? You can plot the different types of reports over time. You can see the months on the x-axis here from January to December. And a couple things to notice. We can get severe weather any month out of the year. Our severe weather season is really January through December. But there is a peak in the season in the springtime, in the March through June time period. That's when we get the most in terms of hail and tornadoes and damaging winds from thunderstorms. So we're just getting into that now. In the next 3 months, we would expect things to get fairly busy that way. What about flash flooding? Flash flooding, there's two peaks. There's one in the spring, just like the other types of severe weather, and there's another one in the fall. And what do you all think? Why might we have a peak in that September, October, November time frame? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Go ahead and type your answer into the questions or chat box. Why do you think we might have a peak in flash flooding during those months, September, October, November? All right, absolutely right. Yeah, that would be in part because we have hurricane season. And I should say this bar chart does not include Harvey. It was created in the earlier part of 2017. So if we put Harvey in here, this October chart would be pretty much off the map. So that's pretty much the case. In the spring, we have a lot of severe thunderstorms that include hail, tornadoes, damaging winds, and flash flooding. But then there's another peak in the fall during hurricane season. So how can we protect ourselves from flash flooding? Get to higher ground. Now, what on earth does that mean? If we have a fairly flat area, that might mean getting to higher ground, but also moving up in a building. Let's say you're downtown and you've got flooding in the streets of Houston. Maybe it's vertical evacuation. Maybe you're moving up in the structure. We had the horrible experience during Harvey of some people ending up on the roof. And that was essentially getting to higher ground, the only option they had at that time. Another really important thing for us is do not drive into the water. Most of our fatalities occur that way. People, either intentionally or accidentally driving into a flooded roadway. Never drive around a barricade, and stay informed. Know where what the road conditions are, where the flash flood warnings are. I can tell you if I'm returning from, let's say, outreach up in Bryan College Station, I'm coming back to League City, and there's flash flood warnings in Houston, I'm not going through Houston. I'm going to route around that and just not put myself in that situation. So be aware of where the warnings are and what the road conditions are. Like I said, never drive around barricades. We have horrible examples of this where, we've got video from the TransStar cameras of someone literally driving around a barricade and into floodwaters, and in some cases losing their life. So we just can't do that. And this bar chart shows basically what people are doing when they die from flash flooding. And you can see about 2/3 in this example driving into flooded roadways. So that's why we always say turn around, don't drown. It's because this is so common, and even more so in this area. The numbers would be even higher. What about tornadoes and tornado safety? First off, what is a tornado? Tornado is a narrow, violently rotating column of air that extends from the base of a thunderstorm to the ground. And one thing I would add is we've had tornadoes in our area, including LaPorte, which didn't have any thunder at all. I'm thinking of Halloween 2015, I believe. And so you almost don't need a thunderstorm, but it is this violently rotating column of air that extends from the thunderstorm to the ground. Couple local examples. Here's a case off of Galveston where we had a water spout over the water, and basically a water spout is a tornado over the water. it has some slight differences compared to its cousins over land, but essentially it's a tornado over water. And this particular one came ashore and did damage on Galveston Island. This happens to be 29th and Seawall, the dolphin world there. And there were actually 4 people injured by flying debris. Look at this sheared off 2x4 into this roof of a house. There were actually a couple police officers that drove into this thing as it was coming ashore and then drove quickly out of it. And it actually shattered the windows on their cruiser. Another interesting example here from just last May, we had a really powerful water spout just offshore. I mean, this happens to be the view from San Leon, but it was visible from LaPorte, from Morgan's Point, and from off of Beach City as well. So this type of water spout is just as strong as anything you're going to find. It's what we call a tornadic water spout, in that it came from what we call a supercell thunderstorm. And you can see the radar image there with this hook echo wrapped around, and even a little hole in the center of that, and then a very tight circulation. So now, we were fortunate here in that it stayed over water, but it was making its way down to the Galveston Causeway, so and the ferry path there. So we were very concerned about it. Another example of a tornado in the local area. And this goes to, remember I mentioned earlier, we can get severe weather any month of the year. This is a December 2015 case. And it's actually working its way up I-45 near Willis, Texas, and did some significant damage here. This occurred on a Sunday, which was fortunate. There was only one security man at the factory here, and he was uninjured. Here's another case. This happens to be a day when Pasadena, LaPorte, and Morgan's Point all had separate tornadoes from the same storm. And I'm showing you this video. Hopefully y'all can see this. It's a video here from the Port of Houston. Watch carefully. Here comes the tornado from right to left. Look, watch these rail cars here. You see a power flash. There's the swirling wind, and there you go. So it toppled those rail cars quite easily, and you can see these dogs here just coming to check out the scene. They're doing just fine. They had shelter, they heard the warning, and everything was good. But here's some damage down in Pasadena. This tornado was an EF1 on the weaker side, but that's still enough to flip automobiles around. And then you can see the path the tornado took through the stacks here of the containers through Morgan's Point. Halloween 2015. Now, by the way, a lot of our disasters seem to occur on holidays. I don't know why that is, but this is just another example. Halloween morning, we had some significant damage. LaPorte, Pasadena, Friendswood, and so many of y'all may remember these tornadoes. Let's talk about tornado safety now. Getting back to our watch definition, tornado watch means be prepared, tornadoes may form. So it doesn't mean you need to take any immediate action, but you want to plan where you're going to shelter if you need to, and make sure you're plugged in to any updates. Maybe you're looking at the radar, or you have one of those weather alert apps, or you have your cell phone with you with the WEA enabled, and stay weather ready. Be ready to act if that watch becomes a warning, because the tornado warning means take action. A tornado is expected. There's either been one detected on radar or sighted. And so that's when you want to take shelter immediately. Now, human nature, I've talked to so many people in these tornado environments. And what is the first thing they do when they hear a tornado warning? I know you're thinking of it. They're going outside. Typically, they're going outside to see for themselves if there's anything need to worry about. And I understand that they're trying to confirm the threat essentially, but you really want to get to your safe room as soon as possible. If you're driving, find the nearest shelter, get off the road if you can, and listen for updates on that tornado warning. We will issue an all clear at the Weather Service, but that won't go to your phone so easily. So that, that's a problem. It will go to some of those apps, but so while you're sheltering, you want to know when the threat is over. Kind of to sum up, tornado watch. Conditions could lead to the formation of severe storms and tornadoes. Be prepared. Know your safe location, where you would go if there was a tornado. The warning means take action. There is an imminent danger to life and property, so get to that safe room in your house, and we'll talk about where that is in a moment. There is also something called tornado emergency that we have, knock on wood, never had to use here. We probably could have used it for the Polk County, Unalaska tornado, but this is an exceedingly rare situation where there's a severe threat of catastrophic damage to a confirmed violent tornado. So we're talking about a scenario where there's a large violent tornado moving through a populated area. And in that rare case, we might issue a tornado emergency. So again, hoping not to issue those, but that is a possibility. We do have something similar for flash flooding that we never had to use either for many years. But in recent years, we've had to use that flash flood emergency. So where do you go to shelter from a tornado? There's some labeling on this graphic, some of which really doesn't apply. Like, move to your basement. We don't really have basements in the area. But what you do want to do is get to an interior room without windows on the lowest floor of your house. So for many of us, that might be a bathroom or closet, kind of right in the center of that ground floor. You're not really that safe on the top floor. You want to stay away from windows. And so what ends up being the best option is getting into that closet or bathroom kind of in the center of your house. What if you're on the road? A lot of people think, okay, I'm going to get up and under a bridge. It turns out that's not the case. That's not a good option. Because in that narrow opening, that swirling wind can actually be accelerated through there at a much higher speed. So if you're in your vehicle, you want to get to a sturdy structure. Drive to a sturdy structure, go on inside. Maybe that's a business. Maybe you're able to get home and shelter there. A vehicle is not a safe place to be in a tornado. Let's talk now about the lightning hazard. Every thunderstorm has thunder and lightning by definition. National Weather Service does not actually issue warnings for lightning, which surprises a lot of people. The severe thunderstorm warning is for large hail and or damaging winds. But any thunderstorm can be dangerous because of lightning. So outdoor sports is one situation where we have a lot of lightning fatalities, soccer, golf, running, you name it. And so bottom line is, if there's a lightning threat or a thunder threat, get inside, leave the field, get home, get in school. Next best thing to a sturdy closed structure is going to be your car, which is essentially a closed metal structure. And roll those windows up. For beachgoers, thunderstorms are very dangerous as well. The lightning can strike several miles away from the storm. And so head inside at the first sign of bad weather. Maybe you see some storm clouds coming in, either from whatever direction the storms are coming that day. Reference that radar app, like I was saying. Have something like that on your phone. And remember, and also if you hear thunder, when thunder roars, go indoors is kind of that little memory slogan there to remind you, when you hear thunder, you're close enough to be struck, because that bolt of lightning can extend out several miles. So you want to get inside. Don't wait to get inside. Like I said, when thunder roars, go indoors. There is another slogan: see a flash, dash inside. Whether it's a flash of lightning or the rumble of thunder, that's your cue. You better get either in a sturdy shelter or in a metal hard-topped vehicle. And then the rule of thumb that the NCAA follows is wait until it's been 30 minutes since you last heard thunder to resume your activities. So that's a good rule of thumb. For the boaters out there, we know we're especially vulnerable to thunderstorms and severe weather if we're out in a boat. So for the mariner, it's even more important to understand what the forecast is, know if there are thunderstorms out there that are heading their way, and get into port, get to land before you've got that dangerous wind and lightning threat over the waters. We do have sort of a kid-oriented lightning safety game here on this website I'll give you in a moment, Leon the Lightning Lion. And it's a great way to teach kids some of these safety rules. I'll show you the website in a moment, but you can click on this and there's a little bit of a game they can go through. We go ahead and play this video here, and you can see lightning striking right down the spine of that tree. I'll go ahead and play it one more time. And tall objects like trees, power lines, antenna, metal fences, these are all bad places to be sheltering because those are going to be preferred locations to get struck. Any tall object extending out of the ground can be essentially where that lightning bolt goes. Why a metal fence? Well, a metal is a conductor, so it can draw charge from the ground upward that the downwards stroke can intersect. And then here's that link I was telling you about. If you want to explore that, there's some neat things for kids, that lightning safety game, also posters like the one we see here. Let's talk about severe thunderstorms now. Now we've already talked about tornadoes and lightning. What I want to talk about here mainly is the damaging wind and large hail threats. And that's what a severe thunderstorm watch or warning means, that there is the threat of very large hail and or damaging thunderstorm winds. Now, what about tornado watch versus severe thunderstorm watch? You can still get tornadoes if the watch is severe thunderstorm, but what that means is it's the high winds and hail that are going to be more common than the tornado threat. So again, have a way to receive weather warnings. I would recommend having an app that gives you those alerts, and you can monitor the radar as well. Have a shelter planned and stay weather ready. And then the warning, just like with tornadoes, means take action. Damaging winds and large hail are expected. So take shelter indoors immediately and get away from windows. High winds, large hail equals broken windows. And that's kind of what we see here. This was a hailstorm in Wiley, Texas. On the right-hand side, you can see the high wind and large hail has broken all these windows, and it's damaged all these vehicles. So hail is nothing you want to mess with. Again, you want to get indoors away from windows. And if these guys are out here swimming and they waited way too long, obviously they've got some large hail coming down, and that can injure you, in some cases severely. We did have a hailstorm in Hitchcock, Santa Fe back in April 2013. Like I said earlier, we do have a peak in that April-May timeframe. And in this case, it damaged most of the structures in the Hitchcock, Santa Fe area, including all these police cruisers. Another example from March 2009. In this case, we had baseball-sized hail, and you can see the kind of damage it does. And understand that there's no way you want to be caught outside when you have a hailstorm coming in. As far as high winds, many examples of severe thunderstorms that don't have tornadoes, but the high winds can be just as deadly. In this case, a line of storms moved into Indianapolis. It ended up collapsing this stage, and we had 7 killed and 43 injured. What did the radar look like? There was a line of storms to the west. Now, there were some public safety folks looking at the radar, and they were really, their eyes were drawn to this large red line. But it turns out, and a meteorologist would know this light blue fine line out in advance of it is actually where the wind gust is. Right where I've drawn in there. So they thought they had more time to get people out of there, but in truth, it was right upon them there. Another case where a high wind event led to tragedy was the Missouri duck boat sinking back in 2018. You could see a big storm came across the lake, and they were out on the lake, and this thing capsized, and there were 17 fatalities. So what did the radar look like then? Now, in this case, this pink circle is where the duck boat accident occurred. It looks kind of similar, right, to that Indianapolis stage collapse. We've got a line of storms here, and this thin blue line out ahead, this is where the outflow or the gust front is pushing out ahead and where those very high winds are. Now, if you read the accounts, the duck boat operator says he looked at the weather radar before setting out. But if he had, he would have seen this line of storms coming in from the northwest. Also, these red boxes are severe thunderstorm warnings. So if he got the warning, he would understand from the National Weather Service that we were thinking there was a threat for high winds. So, we always hate to see this, in the Weather Service, in that the office did put out a warning, but it looks like it was not heeded here. And so we move forward in time, and again, it's that thin blue line out ahead of the main heavy rain area. That's what we call the outflow boundary or the gust front. And then here it is crossing the lake here. Hail and high wind safety, the advice is pretty much the same. Get indoors into a sturdy structure, stay away from windows. If you're in a car, stay in your vehicle. Pull over to a safe location, and you don't want to be heading down the highway at high speeds with high winds and or large hail coming in. You're going to lose a windshield there. And then shelter your vehicle ahead of the storm. Let's say you've got space in your garage and your vehicle is sitting out in the driveway, and you hear severe thunderstorm warning for large hail. It would pay to shelter that vehicle before the large hail comes in. So just to sum up the thunderstorm-related hazards: tornado, take action, get indoors in a sturdy structure away from windows, interior room on the lowest floor. Hail and wind, move indoors away from windows. Lightning, same idea, move indoors or in a vehicle if you don't have a sturdy a shelter nearby. And then flash flooding. Avoid water-covered roads. Don't drive into around barriers. And so that's just a quick summary. And what I'm going to do now is hand it over to Catherine, and she's going to talk us through some other hazards that we might see in the springtime.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to start with covering some of the dangers at the beach. As we know, the weather is going to start warming up. People are going to want to go to the beach. And whether you're here in the Southeast Texas region, or if you're, going out of state, if you're in Florida, California, Hawaii, wherever, a lot of these same tips still apply. So these are some of the 9 basic dangers that you can expect at the beach from, heat and sunburn, from sun exposure, lightning from severe storms, rip currents, water quality. So if there's a lot of bacteria that's in the water. We have marine animals, so jellyfish and sharks, harmful algae blooms, high tides or strong waves, and then obviously tsunamis. So we'll go more into detail next in the next few slides, more specific ones that affect our area the most. So next slide. And then moving on to heat safety. So as Dan covered earlier, a lot of our injuries and deaths that we get here in the Southeast Texas area is related to heat. So it's really important for you to practice some of these heat safety tips wherever you are. So if you're outside, make sure that you're staying hydrated, take breaks in the shade as often as possible. If you're indoors, check on the elderly and the sick and those that are without AC. Also check your own AC unit, make sure that's okay. If you're in a vehicle, make sure that you never leave your kids or pets unattended, and look before you lock your doors just in case you didn't forget them. And if you're outdoors, obviously limit that strenuous outdoor activity, find shade, and stay hydrated. And then here's some more heat safety tips, kind of going over that again. So during extreme heat, which, like I said earlier, Southeast Texas does experience a lot, make sure that you're able to find air conditioning whenever you're out and about. Avoid doing anything too strenuous. Something that you can do nice in the spring when the weather's nice, like today, is going to be a lot more difficult when when the heat index over 100 degrees in the summer. It's also important to wear light and breathable clothing to allow your body to sweat and kind of evaporate some of that excess heat on your body. Make sure that you're checking on family members and neighbors and friends that they're doing okay, especially the sick and elderly. Drink plenty of water. Recognize the symptoms for heat exhaustion and heat stroke and heat cramps. If you feel yourself getting fatigued and or even if you start sweating or you're getting nauseous, those could be some signs of some heat exhaustion and potential heat stroke. So make sure that you're aware of that and take the proper precautions if you are experiencing that. And then finally, once again, never leave people or pets in a closed car. Always look before you lock your doors. And then this is another safety graphic kind of showing how hot that it can get in a car when the outside temperature is pretty hot. And as we can see here, within 10 minutes, that the inside temperature of a car can reach almost 100 degrees at 99 degrees. Within 20 minutes, it can reach 109. And then finally, at the end of an hour, it's inside of that car can reach 123 degrees Fahrenheit or more. So it's very important to always check for children and people and pets in your car because it can heat up rather quickly. And then here's some sad statistics about hot cars and child safety. On average, about 38 kids die each year by being left in an unattended vehicle. 88% of those are 3 and under, and over half were forgotten by a caregiver. So it's just always really important to double check when it's really hot out to make sure that this can be avoided. And finally, if you're outside in the sun or if you're at the beach, it's really important to take the proper sun protection. So obviously, make sure that you wear SPF sunscreen, at least SPF 15, and make sure that it says broad spectrum, so it covers all the ranges of UV type radiation from the sun. Make sure that you are wearing SPF clothing or even just type of clothing to cover yourself up. Always make sure that you're reapplying every 2 hours because whether you're sweating or in the water, it'll wear off over time. So make sure that you're always reapplying. Wear a hat, sunglasses, and seek shade, especially during the midday hours, usually between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Those are the hours that we get the most intense radiation from the sun. So especially if you're out during those hours from 10 to 2, make sure that you definitely take these precautions. I'm not saying that before 10 a.m. or after 2 p.m. you won't get sunburned, but it's just that window of time is when it's the peak time for you to get sunburned. And then finally, moving on to some other beach hazards. So what are rip currents? Whip currents are kind of like a narrow current of water that's flowing really rapidly out into like the deeper waters. And you'll usually find those at breaks and sandbars or near areas such as jetties and piers. And they can move pretty fast, sometimes 1 to 2 feet per second, but some have been measured as fast as 8 feet per second. You can always ask a lifeguard if you're at the beach if there are rip currents nearby, or what are some of the rip current safeties. You can look at some of the flags that they put up at lifeguard stations as well to kind of see what that rip current risk is for the day. So what do you do when you are captured in a rip current? So obviously the first thing is to relax. The rip current is not going to pull you under the water. It's just going to take you out to deeper water, but it's not going to pull you under. And so a lot of people, the first mistake that they do is they'll just immediately trying to start to swim to shore. But what they're doing is they're fighting against that current, and you'll just wear yourself out and you'll get tired, especially if you're not a strong swimmer. So what you can do is to escape the rip current is swim parallel to the shore. So once you're out of that rip current and once you stop feeling that tug of that rip current, then it's safe for you to try and swim back to shore. If you still don't feel like you're a strong enough swimmer, obviously wave your hands and yell and try and get the lifeguard's attention and have them help rescue you, or as always, just swim close to a lifeguard station as well, so they can be quick to respond if you are captured in a rip current. And then these are some current rip current statistics for the past 13 years for Texas. As you can see, the fatalities by month are usually during those warmer seasons when we do get more people visiting the ocean and visiting the beach, especially May through August. But it doesn't mean it can't happen any other month. And obviously, fatalities by age, you can see that a lot of them are younger people, but you still can't rule out the elderly as well. And then we also kind of break it down by county and by gender as well. So you can kind of see about 20% from Galveston County. 20% of rip current fatalities are in Galveston County, and Brazoria looks like another 5%. So a good chunk of Texas is affected by this. And then finally, this is wrapping it up. I can wrap it up unless Dan wants to talk again, but